Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of On the Sidelines. My name's Matthew Lee Burney,
My name is Benedict Rhodes.
and we hope everyone's having a happy holiday season and keeping in there with these crazy times, which continue to be crazy right now. But how have your holidays been so far, Ben?
Not bad. I guess we were talking before the show. They've been a bit more low key, I guess, than previous years. There's only a small group of us this year, unfortunately. But not a lot we can do about that at the moment. Um, Other than that, just chilling, just not really doing anything really. What about you?
Yeah, same here. Just working really and just taking a break from what was a crazy semester, but getting back to it in 2 weeks now. Um, but I mean, in the sports world, there's been a lot going on. So do you want to start us off?
Yeah, the holiday season, of course, means the World Juniors are back. They kicked off. The puck dropped, I guess, this year on Christmas Day. What have you made of the first week of the World Juniors, Matthew? Or first few days, rather.
Well, yeah, well, I think first of all for Canada, I think they've had a sort of I guess, an easy start, I would say, to this World Junior Tournament. Although their second game was tough. Looking back at their first game against Germany, which has had some COVID issues. They won 16-2. I mean, it's kind of crazy to even look at that score. But yeah, they won 16-2 against Germany on Saturday. And just last night, barely beat Slovakia 3-1, which is I think a tougher game for Canada. Obviously, it showed that they can get the job done, and they did eventually with the empty net goal in I think it was the final minute or so. But yeah, I guess I'll say I've been impressed with Canada so far, but of course they do have to finish the group play. They have Switzerland and Finland to finish at least until the quarterfinals. So I think we'll learn a lot more about Canada, especially in the Finland game. But yeah, I've been impressed with them so far.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, obviously, the Germany game maybe wasn't the best way to measure how good they are. Like you mentioned, Germany had some issues with COVID. I think they only had 14 players dressed, including a backup goalie. So they didn't have a ton of skaters, so they were really tired, and you could tell by the way they were playing. Whereas Canada, I think, had 20 first round draft picks on the ice. So there's obviously wasn't a balanced matchup. You mentioned it 16-2. It was a little bit hard to watch towards the end. Canada stopped celebrating after like 6 or 7 goals. Um, it was a good game for Canada to just get everyone going. Um, but like I said, it is a bit harder to watch than the second game, which although Canada only lost, oh, sorry, only won rather 3-1. It was actually a better contest, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think before group play was going to start, there was originally supposed to be two exhibition games for each team. So I would say this was Canada's second exhibition game just because of how lopsided that game was. But in that game, I mean, it was impressive for like a player like Dylan Cousins, for example, who scored a hat trick, and of course a couple other players got in some goals as well. Um, but I think going forward, as you mentioned, as one of us mentioned, they have a tough test against Finland, who actually barely beat the Germans 5-3. So I think that probably shows that Canada can, I mean, maybe beat up on Finland, considering they only lost by two against Germany. But yeah, I think going forward, we'll have to see how they do.
I also wonder though if fatigue was a factor, right? Like Germany, their game against Canada, they're already shorthanded and playing back-to-back games against Finland and Canada was always going to be tough. I think. Same with Canada playing on back-to-back nights with Slovakia on Sunday. So um, it's a bit hard to sort of measure these teams, I guess, with the COVID issues, with the fatigue. Um, but like Canada, they look like they have good chemistry. Unfortunately, missing their captain. But you mentioned Dylan Cousins has been really, really good. It's just behind me here, as you can see. Uh, he looked really, really good against Germany. Like I think at one point, Canada had 5 shots and 5 goals to start the one of the periods. I think it was the third period against Germany. Um, Yeah, they just look clinical. They look pretty good. As you mentioned, that Finland game is, I think, going to be the one to see how they measure up against the rest of the teams in this tournament.
Yeah, I think for me, it's gonna. I think if you can agree with me, Group A is gonna come down to Canada and Finland. Would you say that?
Yeah, I think I have to agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And looking at the Group B side of things, there's also a couple notable games. First off, on Christmas Day, we had USA and Russia facing off. Russia won 5-3 against US, but then I think it was yesterday, if I'm not wrong, or over the weekend, lost to the Czech Republic, which was kind of shocking. What would you say about that?
Yeah. I don't think anyone expected that one. That's for sure. Um, Russia versus USA was an interesting result, of course, as well. Like, look at the standings in Group B. Um, it's getting close at the top of the standings there. Like, there's a lot of good teams. Sweden's top after only playing one game. The Russians and Americans have each lost once, and I think Group B might be a bit closer than maybe we expected it to be.
Yeah, especially with that Czech Republic win against Russia, I think it showed that. I mean, any like besides Austria, any of the other four teams can possibly win it. I mean, bearing any crazy circumstance come the quarterfinals. But yeah, I think I think that's obviously a closer group than Group A is right now, and I wouldn't be shocked to see if someone outside of the U.S. or Russia, who most of us would probably expect to make the final, uh, actually make it, like Sweden or Czech. And I think also Sweden won their, what was it, like 50 plus group game. I think they set a record for that, if I'm not wrong. And of course, they've still had their quarterfinal, semifinal woes. So we'll have to see how they do when that comes.
I think Sweden needs to bring back the blue jerseys. Everyone wants to see the blue jerseys back. Um, I can guarantee you, Sweden, if you're watching this, probably not, but if you are, bring back the blue jerseys and you'll win this tournament.
Well, there you go, Ben. Ben giving some.
You heard it here first.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, I guess. I mean, it's kind of too early to say because group play isn't over and we haven't got to the quarterfinals. But who would you say right now would come out of Group B?
Group B, I think Sweden is a good young team. They're currently first after just one game, um, so they could be a top by 3 points by the end of their game. So I like Sweden to come out of that group. I think Russia and the States and the Czechs. It's a little bit too close to call, I think, right now. But in terms of Group A, I think Canada and Finland are going to be the two, with Canada winning the group. I think. How about you?
Yeah, it's tougher to predict like this group, obviously, instead of Group A. I think when first of all with Group A, I think Canada's going to make it out of that group. And as asked for Group B, I think it really is tough to say right now. But I think I'd love a U.S. Canada final.
Okay.
Of course, I think any hockey fan will love that. So I'm going to say just for that sake and how the U.S. has looked, considering they've only faced Austria and Russia, and I think they won 11-0 against Austria, but that's kind of lower competition, I'd say. But I guess right now I'll say USA just for a Canada US final.
Yeah, I think that I agree. I'd like to see that. Obviously, um, yeah, it's gonna be up to the other teams to make it interesting. I think.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else to say before we move on?
No, I don't think so. Really. Just maybe one more thing is we're filming this on Monday night, so there's a couple of games going on tonight, of course, and Sweden's currently up 1-0 against Austria. So as it stands, they're going to be top of Group B table by the end of the night.
Yeah, well, there we go. And yeah, group play finishes on New Year's Eve, and I think quarterfinal matches start on the weekend. So, looking forward to that. But now I guess we'll move on to the NFL, which had a lot of notable games come from Week 16. Which one would you say was the most notable?
Yeah, it was an interesting week in the NFL. I think maybe the one that has the biggest implications on the playoffs, as we'll get to in a little bit, was the Jets beating the Browns 23-16. I think that was an interesting one because the Browns, who looked like they might make the playoffs the first time since 2002, I believe, um, now need some big results in Week 17 to get a playoff spot. They need to beat the 12-3 Steelers in their final regular season game to clinch a playoff spot, which it won't be an easy task, of course. Although the Steelers did clinch the division this weekend, um, so they might choose to rest some players, maybe get some guys back fully healthy before the playoffs. And of course, the Browns as well were missing four of their best receivers, so because of COVID. So they're obviously weakened in that regard too. Still almost managed to beat the Jets, I guess. But um, yeah, I think as long as they test negative, I believe I read that they'll be cleared to play against the Steelers. So that could be a huge boost for them as they look to clinch a playoff spot. But losing to the Jets and possibly losing a playoff spot was a big opportunity missed for them, I think.
Yeah, that was definitely an unfortunate situation for the Browns. I think they found out on Saturday that that most of their wide receivers would be out, and I mean, obviously, it showed in that game against the
Yeah.
Jets. And but for me, I'll say the Titans and Packers on Sunday night was a big game. Of course, I think it was for Aaron Rodgers as well, who brought the team to a record of 12-3 and staying at the number one seed in the NFC playoff picture. He threw for 231 yards with 4 touchdowns, and his wide receiver Devontae Adams had 142 yards last night. And as I mentioned, they do have the number one seed, and I think last night showed that if the playoffs have to run through Green Bay, I think it's going to be a tough scenario for teams coming into Green Bay and playing the Packers, especially how Rodgers is playing right now with his MVP caliber season.
Yeah, it's interesting how good the Packers are doing because if you look back to what we had a video about as well, the NFL draft, a lot of people were sort of surprised, I guess, that they didn't take a receiver. They instead went for a quarterback to replace Rodgers in a couple of years whenever Rodgers decides to sort of hang up the cleats, I guess. Um, and at the time, Aaron Rodgers didn't seem to be too pleased about that. Um, but he's proving he doesn't need the extra receivers to be successful, and be interesting to see, as you mentioned, if they can clinch the first seed and have the playoffs, as you mentioned, run through Green Bay.
Yeah, it will definitely be interesting week 17 as we'll get to. I think you mentioned it already, one of the big games that's coming from week 17.
Yeah, you mentioned there's a lot of playoff implications from those results, and also going into Week 17. One of which is the Browns versus Steelers. Who do you think is going to win that game and affect, I guess, the playoff implications?
Well, right now I think I mean we're talking before the Bills play the Patriots, so we don't know for sure the result. But if the Bills do win, they do have the uh, 2 seed over the Pittsburgh Steelers, who would be the 3 seed, of course. I think if they get into that kind of situation where they want to really get the 2 seed and hope Buffalo loses on Sunday against the Dolphins, I think they're gonna probably win that game. But I think also the Browns are gonna put everything out there, especially if their wide receivers come back from the COVID issues they were having. But I'd say right now the Steelers, although they were before yesterday's game against the Colts, they were sort of slipping, especially losing to teams like Cincinnati and Washington, who have sort of been subpar for the season. Although Washington is fighting for the NFC East crown right now, but I'll say, I guess just to close out the season, I'll go with the Steelers.
Yeah, I agree. I think it depends on if the number 2 seeds play. I think the Steelers should have wrapped this up weeks ago. Then you mentioned they lost 3 games in a row. This whole division title thing could have been done a long time ago. But I guess now we have to wait and see what happens in Week 17. I also think if the Steelers play everyone, I'll take the Steelers as well. But I said the Browns have the longest active playoff drought in the NFL, I believe, and and kind of feel bad for their fans. So kind of pulling for them a little bit.
Yeah, I mean it's also interesting considering how everyone's sort of listed the Steelers as a title contender after going 11-0, and then of recent weeks have sort of taken them out of their Super Bowl winning team, like saying that the Bills have the better chance of beating the Chiefs in the AFC than the Steelers. But I mean, I think anything can happen come the playoff time. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens if Ben Roethlisberger can get back to form, and all of their players and everybody can get back into form.
And there's also a lot of implications in the NFC East, as all four teams are playing against each other, with the Giants taking on the Cowboys and the Eagles playing Washington football team. What do you make of those games? Who do you think is going to win them, and who do you think is going to end up taking the NFC East title?
Well, I guess looking at both games for the Washington Eagles game, I'll take Washington. Although um, I know they did lose against Carolina, and they did kind of lose their chance of winning the NFC East on the weekend. But of course, they still hold the first position in that division, and it all just basically comes down to if they win against the Eagles, and then they win the division. But I'll say Washington to bounce back, especially if their quarterback Alex Smith is playing. I think he kind of lifted that team um, after being subpar, or kind of not the best for the whole season. But if he can play on Sunday night, I think he can win against the Eagles, especially a team that's not essentially in the NFC East race anymore. And I guess for the Giants and Cowboys' sake, I think it's sort of tougher to pick that game just because Cowboys have sort of resurged in the past couple of weeks. I think they're on a three game winning streak, while the Giants have had a couple losses recently. But I guess for me, I'll say, just because it's just for parity's sake, I'll say Giants, just to piss off Cowboys fans and all that. Um, but yeah, I'll say Giants and Washington win their respective games.
Yeah, I might have to disagree on the Giants and Cowboys. I think the Cowboys might take that one. As you mentioned, I think Washington, they're currently top of the division. I think they've lost 2 games in a row. I think they're going to want to win. I think they're going to need to win to sort of just prove that they're maybe not legit, but more legit than the rest of the teams in the division. So I'll also back the Washington football team to win this game and take the NFC East division.
Yeah, and also a couple of other big games are coming from all the 10-5 teams who are in the AFC playoff picture right now. Of course, the Titans and Colts are just a couple of those teams. Of course, we mentioned the Browns, Dolphins, Ravens, also, who are 10-5. I guess yeah, I think those are a couple of other big games, especially for the AFC South, which has not been the only division that's not been clinched in the AFC yet. I guess obviously it's coming down to the Titans and Colts. Who would you say, considering Week 17, who would you say wins that game?
I think
The division, sorry.
I think the Colts might take it. I think they have the easier matchup, in my opinion. Taking on Jacksonville, who are bottom feeding, they're dead last in the NFL. So I think I'll give the Colts the advantage over the Titans.
Yeah, I think I picked the Colts to actually win this division of like a month ago or so. But I think just because Titans are looking for a big bounce back against a hapless Texans team who's like have nothing to play for. I think I think they win their game against Houston, and also I think if the Colts win their game against Jacksonville, I think Tennessee has the advantage over that division. So, I mean, just for that sake and their opponent, I'll say Tennessee.
And there are a few teams sort of on the bubble of this AFC playoff picture with the Colts, the Titans, the Dolphins, Ravens, and Browns. Who do you think misses the playoffs out of that group?
Yeah, it's. I think it's really. I think it's kind of tough to say who is going to make miss the playoffs, especially because all five teams are 10-5, all are having great seasons, and I think you can't really go wrong against any of these teams. But I think just because of the opponent and the situation they're in, I'm going to say Dolphins. They do have to face the Bills in Week 17, but I think the Bills may rest some of their starters depending on how tonight goes, and if they really want to solidify that number 2 seed in the AFC playoff picture. But I think I think the Bills really do want to get that number 2 seed, especially if they want to host two playoff games. If they do win their wild card game and get a chance to host the divisional playoff, I think they'll want to get in that situation. So just for that sake, I'll say the Dolphins miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. The Dolphins are going to have a tough time against the Bills. Although, if you watched my little rant last week, hopefully the Bills will play Christian Wade. We'll have to wait and see what that. But I agree the Dolphins are going to have a tough time, but I think the Browns might miss out here. That was a bad loss last week. And they're playing the Steelers, who we mentioned earlier were 11-0 at one point and looked like the best team in the NFL for a little chunk of the season there. So, yes, between the Browns and the Dolphins for me, I think I'll go for the Browns.
Yeah, and just to note, actually, right now the Colts are on the outside looking in. So if everybody essentially wins their games, the Colts would miss the playoffs. But obviously, craziness can happen in Week 17, and we'll have to see what happens there. But looking on the NFC side of things, of course, we talked about the NFC East. I think we both can agree Washington will win that division. But we also have a final playoff spot to determine with the Bears and Cardinals, plus, of course, the two NFC East teams that aren't number one right now. But although their only chance to make the playoffs is to win their division. But I guess I'll ask you, out of the Bears and Cardinals, who would you say gets that final playoff spot?
Yeah, there's two tough matchups for each of those teams. Like the Bears play the Packers, and the Cardinals take on the Rams. But it's a bit hard to pick between them. But I really like watching Kyler Murray play. I think he's really good. So I'd like to see him play in a playoff game, and for that reason, I think I'll just pick the Cardinals.
Yeah, both games are pretty tough for the Bears and Cardinals. I think the easier game is for the Cardinals. It goes the Cardinals' way, facing the Rams. I think for the Bears, I think they're going to have a tougher time against the Packers, especially if the Packers want to solidify that number 1 seed in the NFC playoff picture. So I'll say, just for the easier matchup, the Cardinals.
And of course, not only were there playoff implications in Week 16, but first overall pick implications as well. Mentioned last week when the Jets finally won, they moved off the bottom, and essentially threw away their chance at the number 1 pick and a chance to draft Trevor Lawrence. So and now officially they've lost it with their win over the Browns, with Jacksonville Jaguars now getting the number 1 overall pick. What do you make of that, Matthew?
I mean, it can't get more Jets enough. I mean, uh, first of all, of course, going into that Jets Browns game with the situation the Browns were in, I think, I kind of was thinking that the Jets were actually going to win that game just because of the COVID situation with the Browns, and sure enough, they did. Just losing out that number 1 pick in the NFL draft, but. Yeah, I think the Jacksonville obviously has not been good either, being a 1-14 team now. I'm pretty sure also there was also cheers coming from the Jacksonville Bears game when the Bears scored, but it could be a lot of Bears fans there. But I think Jaguars fans are excited to have the number 1 pick in the NFL draft, and we'll have to see. Of course, right now Trevor Lawrence would obviously be going number 1. I think no doubtly he will. Uh, but yeah, I think Jacksonville fans are excited, and I mean, I don't think it will. I don't know if it'll make them a playoff team next season, but I think they're pretty excited. While Jets fans just continue to suffer.
I guess what we see every year, or a lot of years anyway, with the team getting the first overall pick is sort of just a chance to speed up a rebuild, I guess, and or at least help towards it. And I think that's huge for the Jaguars, but for the Jets again, like I think I want to say they should have thrown the games and tried to lose. Um, but and they could have used this a quarterback like Trevor Lawrence just as much as the Jaguars could have. Um, so it is sort of an opportunity missed. I mean, I'm glad they got a couple wins towards the end of the season, but I don't know. Like you said, it's very Jets thing to do to sort of win
Yeah,
the last games and throw away the number one overall pick.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't think I don't think Jets fans can just take it anymore. I think I mean I'm pretty sure. I mean, if I were Trevor Lawrence, I don't know if I'd be in a what situation I'd rather be in. But I mean, I think both teams are kind of on the bad side of things. But I mean, Jacksonville was actually a playoff team. I think it was 3, 4 years ago, and they didn't make the AFC Championship game. So I mean, I don't think they'll get back to that kind of glory. But at least we'll give them a couple more wins than their one win they have going into Week 17.
I'll definitely point them in the right direction, I guess, and they hopefully give those fans something else to cheer about other than losing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Anything else in the NFL before we finish?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, that does it for episode 21 and actually our final episode of 2020. Thank you guys for watching, especially during a crazy time, a crazy year, I would say. Yeah, but thank you guys for watching episode 21. My name is Matthew Lee Bruni.
My name is Benedict Birds.
And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in 2021.